The sun had barely risen over the small fishing village in Cebu when one 2-year-old Lewin stepped out of his family's nipa hut, clutching a hand-woven bamboo box against his chest. The box was older than Lewin himself, its corners frayed, its lid scratched by time and travel. Yet he held it like a treasure, because to him, it was. Inside that humble box were the only 3 souls on earth who had never left him: Muni, Kiko, and Tala, his cats, his companions, his family. The early morning air smelled like the sea, salty, warm, and full of the quiet promise of a new day. But for Lewin, the morning carried something more, hope mixed with fear, like 2 voices whispering in his ear at once. He tightened his grip on the bamboo handle as he stepped onto the dusty path that ran along the shoreline. Fishermen were pulling their nets in, their hands rough from years of struggle, their faces lined by sun and hardship. They greeted him with gentle nods. Everyone in the village knew the boy with the cats. Some teased him kindly, calling him the cat whisperer, but most simply smiled at the boy who had turned a difficult life into something quietly magical. But they didn't know the whole story. They didn't know why Lewin trained his cats, or why he'd whispered the same wish every night before falling asleep. They didn't know that his dream, impossible, unbelievable, was to stand on the grandest stage in the world, America's Got Talent. It had started 3 years earlier, on a night when the rain fell harder than anyone could remember. Lewin had found the 3 kittens huddled under a broken boat, shivering in the cold. He was shivering too. His father had been gone for months, working construction far away. His mother worked long hours washing clothes just to keep rice on the table. The loneliness in their little home could swallow a child whole. But that night, the kittens had cried louder than the storm, and Lewin couldn't walk away. He scooped them into his shirt, pressing them against his tiny ribs to block the cold. It was the first time in his life he felt like someone needed him. Maybe that's why he loved them so fiercely. Maybe that's why they listened to him in ways even adults never did. At first, the training was nothing more than games. A tap meant, come. A whistle meant, jump. A gentle ps meant, stay with me. But over time, the cats learned things no one believed possible, not because they were special, but because they trusted the boy who had saved them. And Lewin? He learned something too. When you teach with kindness, even the smallest hearts can do incredible things. One night months ago, while watching an old TV outside a neighbor's house, he saw a performer on AGT receive a standing ovation. The world seemed so big, so far away. Yet something inside him whispered. Your voice can be small. Your dreams don't have to be. From then on, the bamboo box became his suitcase of hope. He saved coins for the bus, practiced tricks with the cats every morning, and prayed for a miracle every night. Now, as he walked past the fishermen and the slow-moving waves, that miracle felt closer than ever. The village was waking up behind him. The world was in front of him. And inside the bamboo box, 3 tiny meows reminded him that he wasn't walking alone. Today, the boy who once had nothing was ready to carry everything that mattered. Today, his journey to America's Got Talent truly began. The lights inside the America's Got Talent auditorium felt warmer than the sun in Lewin's tiny Cebu village. As he stepped through the backstage hallway, his heart beat so loudly he wondered if the microphones could hear it. In his hands, the bamboo box trembled not because of the cats inside, but because his own hands were shaking. Around him, performers rushed in every direction, dancers stretching, singers vocalizing, magicians practicing card tricks. Lewin had never seen so many people, so much sound, so much color. The walls were covered in posters of winners and unforgettable acts. He paused in front of one, a young boy who'd once come from nothing and became a global sensation overnight. Maybe it could happen to him, too. A staff member kneeled to his height and smiled. Hey there, sweetheart. What's inside the box? Lewin hesitated, then carefully lifted the lid. 3 pairs of feline eyes blinked back. The staff member gasped. Cats. On AGT. Lewin nodded shyly. But they're trained. They can do things nobody thinks cats can do. Well, she chuckled, Simon Cowell definitely won't expect this. Neither did the audience. After a few minutes, Lewin was escorted to the edge of the stage. Through the curtain, He could hear the roar of the crowd, thousands of people laughing, clapping, waiting. His breathing grew uneven. He'd never stood in front of more than 20 people before. Then he thought of home. Of his mother's tired smile. Of the stormy night when he'd saved 3 tiny lives. Of the mornings he woke before dawn, training his cats with nothing but kindness and leftover food scraps. He whispered to the bamboo box, "We can do this, okay? We made it this far." A soft meow answered him as if in agreement. A crew member gently guided him forward. "You're up next." When the heavy black curtains finally swept open, the world exploded in light. Lewin blinked rapidly. The AGT stage seemed endless, like a bright ocean stretching toward the judges' panel. Thousands of faces stared at him, whispering, curious. He took a single step forward. Then another. Each felt heavier than the last. Simon Cowell leaned back in his seat, studying the small boy walking barefoot across the stage. "Hello," Simon said, his voice unexpectedly gentle. "L. Lewin." "Sir," the boy replied, his voice trembling like a leaf in the wind. "And what are you going to do for us today?" Howie asked, leaning in. Lewin swallowed, clutching the bamboo box as if it were a shield. It's a cat act." The audience murmured immediately. Scoffs. Soft laughs. Everyone knew that cats were stubborn, unpredictable, practically untrainable. Even the judges exchanged glances, half curious, half amused. "A cat act," Simon repeated, raising a brow. "You mean, like tricks?" Lewin nodded, cheeks turning pink. "Yes, sir. But they're more than pets. They're my family." A hush fell over the room. Sophia smiled warmly. "Ah, that's very sweet." Heidi chimed in softly, "How long have you trained them?" 3 years, Lewin said. "Since I found them during a storm." There was something in his tone, honest, fragile, but filled with pride. It made the audience quiet down in a way even producers couldn't force. "And why did you bring them here?" Simon asked. Lewin lowered his eyes. "Because they saved me when I was lonely. And I want the world to see them the way I do. I want people to know that even small hearts can do big things." The theater fell completely silent. Simon sat upright. Not amused. Not confused. But attentive. "All right, Lewin," he finally said. "Show us what love can do." Lewin took a deep breath, set the bamboo box gently on the stage, and whispered to his cats. The magic was about to begin. The moment the soft instrumental music began, a hush swept through the theater. Thousands of eyes locked onto the tiny boy kneeling beside a bamboo box at center stage. Lewin took one slow breath, wiped his sweaty palms on his shorts, and gently lifted the lid. 3 cats emerged, calm, poised, almost regal under the blinding stage lights. Not frantic. Not confused. Not disobedient. Just ready. The audience gasped. Even the judges leaned forward. Lewin whispered, "Muni. It's time." He tapped his bamboo stick softly on the floor once, twice. Muni, the ginger cat, perked up, eyes glowing gold. With the grace of a trained gymnast, she trotted forward and positioned herself before a ring of woven flowers. Lewin lifted the ring high above his head. The crowd held its breath. Then Muni leapt. She soared through the circle like a streak of fire, landing perfectly on a tiny wooden stool on the other side. The stool barely wobbled. The audience erupted. But Lewin didn't smile yet. This was just the beginning. He turned to Kiko, the black and white cat with sharp instincts. Earlier, the audience had noticed a thin rope stretched between 2 posts, no wider than a pencil. Many assumed it was decoration. Now they knew better. Lewin pointed to the rope. "Kiko, walk." In a moment that felt like magic stitched to courage, Kiko hopped onto the tiny rope. The theater went silent. The kind of silence that swallows entire cities. Slowly, carefully. Kiko placed one paw in front of the other. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. Her tail extended for balance, her whiskers twitching with focus. Halfway across, a camera zoomed in on Simon's face. The man was stunned, eyes wide, lips parted, disbelief painting every line of his expression. Kiko reached the end of the tightrope, hopped down like a feather, and rubbed her head against Luwen's leg. The audience exploded again, cheers, gasps, whistles. But the best was yet to come. Luwen turned to the smallest of the three Tala, a tiny calico with mismatched eyes and a heart bigger than she looked. She had been the weakest when he found them, barely breathing beneath a broken boat. Today, she stood proudly at the center of the stage, tail straight, trusting her boy completely. Tala, Luwen whispered with a tremble in his voice. Ready for the big one? She meowed softly. Luwen stepped backward, spreading his arms. The music softened, rising with emotional tension. Then, Tala sprinted forward, climbed up the small ramp, leapt gracefully onto Luwen's shoulder, balanced there for a heartbeat, and then sailed through the air into his open arms. It looked like she was flying. The audience screamed. Heidi covered her mouth. Howie stood up. Even the camera operator gasped. Then, with trembling hands, Luwen placed 3 colorful bowls on the stage, spreading them out like petals of a flower. Each bowl had a word painted inside in small, uneven handwriting, his handwriting. Family. Faith. Future. He kneeled beside them and whispered 3 soft commands. To everyone's shock, the cats split up, each moving to a different bowl perfectly, without hesitation. Mooney sat beside family. Kiko's paw touched Fath. Tiny Tala curled inside future, purring loudly. And then, like a miracle timed with destiny, a bright screen behind Luwen lit up with the words, "Love trains the impossible." The judges' table shook with applause. The audience rose to its feet, clapping, cheering, screaming so loudly that Luwen flinched, overwhelmed by the sound of dreams coming true. But the applause didn't stop. It grew. It thundered. Because this wasn't just a cat act. This was love in motion. This was kindness performing miracles. This was a boy who had trained the impossible simply by believing in the small lives that had once believed in him. As the music faded, Luwen stood on the glowing stage, cats beside him, heart pounding. For the first time in his life, he truly felt seen. The applause was still echoing through the auditorium when the lights dimmed slightly, casting a soft glow around the boy and his 3 cats. The stage sparkled with confetti dust still drifting from earlier performances, but now, all eyes rested on Luwen. He stood frozen, overwhelmed, clutching Tala close to his chest. His small body trembled not with fear this time, but with an emotion too big for his thin frame to hold. Simon Cowell leaned forward slowly, his elbows resting on the table, his eyes narrowed not with judgment, but with genuine curiosity. Something about the boy had shifted the energy in the room. It wasn't just the tricks. It wasn't just the performance. It was the heart behind it. Luwen, Simon began, his voice unusually gentle. Why are you crying? Cameras zoomed in. The entire audience held their breath. Luwen wiped his cheek with the back of his hand. Another tear slid down anyway. He tried to speak but his voice cracked, catching on the lump in his throat. I didn't think anyone would clap, he finally whispered. The audience softened instantly. Some people placed their hands over their hearts. A woman in the front row was already crying. Luwen continued, his words trembling as he tried to stay composed. In my village, people don't have time to watch things like this. Everyone's busy working, trying to survive. He looked down at his slippers, old, worn, nearly breaking apart. I always felt small. Like nothing I did mattered. Simon's expression changed entirely. Heidi's eyes glistened. Sophia leaned forward with her hand over her mouth. Luwen swallowed hard, then looked at his cats, Muni sitting proudly, Kiko perched elegantly, Tala curled into his arm. But these cats, he said softly, voice breaking again, they stayed with me when I was lonely. When there was no food, they still came to me. When I had nothing, they chose me. A hushed murmur rippled through the room, empathy, understanding, heartache woven together. The boy continued, I trained them because they were the only ones who listened. The only ones who believed in me. He placed a gentle kiss on the top of Tala's head. And today, they helped me show the world that even someone like me, someone with nothing, can do something good. The theater fell completely silent. And then, In a moment that seemed almost scripted by fate, Tala lifted her tiny paw and placed it right on Lewin's cheek. A collective gasp spread through the crowd. It wasn't a trick. It wasn't a cue. It wasn't rehearsed. It was a cat comforting her boy. This simple, tender gesture struck the entire room like lightning. Thousands of people felt it at the same time, that warm, human ache that comes when you witness real love. Sophia wiped her tears openly. "Oh my God, that's beautiful," she whispered. Heidi shook her head in awe. "She knows. She really knows." Even Howie's voice cracked. This is one of the sweetest things I've ever seen." But Simon Cowell, the man known for being unshakable, was moved in a way no one expected. He slowly pushed back his chair. The audience sensed something big was coming. The pressure in the room changed. People leaned forward, breath held. And then, Simon stood up. The crowd erupted. A standing ovation from Simon Cowell, rare, powerful, emotional. Lewin's eyes widened. Tears streamed uncontrollably now. Simon's voice carried above the applause. "Lewin, this wasn't just a performance. This was a lesson. A reminder of what loyalty looks like. What love looks like." The audience cheered louder, some shouting the boy's name. In that moment, under blinding lights and thunderous applause, the poor Filipino boy who once trained cats on dirt floors felt his world shift. He wasn't invisible anymore. He mattered. The cheers still thundered across the theater long after Simon stood, but for Lewin, the sound had become a warm, blurry echo like a dream he wasn't ready to wake from. He clutched Tala tightly while Muni and Kiko pressed their tiny bodies against his feet, sensing the emotions swirling around their boy. Golden lights glowed overhead. The AGT stage felt less like a stage now, and more like a moment carved out of destiny. Heidi was the first to speak. She leaned forward, wiping tears from the corners of her eyes. "Lewin," she said softly, "this wasn't a cat act. This wasn't even a talent show performance. This was a love letter. A love letter from you to the world." Her words made the audience clap again, gentler this time, like they didn't want to overwhelm the trembling boy in the center of the stage. Sophia placed a hand over her heart. "You showed us something we don't see every day," she said. "You showed us loyalty. You showed us devotion. And you showed us how love can turn something small into something extraordinary." Lewin lowered his head, overwhelmed. He wasn't used to praise. In his village, he trained his cats quietly, without applause, without recognition. And now here he was, in front of millions, being seen for the very first time. Howie leaned forward next. "What you did here was magical," he said. "Pure magic. And you didn't use tricks or fancy props. You used kindness. And that's what makes it unforgettable." The crowd cheered, chanting his name now. "Lewin." But then the room quieted as Simon Cowell lifted his microphone again. His voice was different now, soft, reflective, almost emotional. "Lewin," he said slowly, "I've watched thousands of acts in my life. Thousands. Many amazing. Many unforgettable. But what you brought here today," he paused, searching for the right words, "is one of the most sincere things I've ever seen on this stage." The audience gasped at the weight of his statement. "You didn't just train your cats," Simon continued. "You cared for them. You protected them. You believed in them. And in doing so, they helped you believe in yourself." Lewin felt his knees weaken. Simon smiled gently, the rare kind of smile he gave only when moved truly, deeply. "This," Simon said, "is what America's Got Talent is all about." And then, Howie pressed the golden buzzer. The moment the button clicked, the entire theater erupted. A burst of golden confetti shot upward like fireworks. The golden light bathed the stage in a heavenly glow. Lewin gasped, eyes wide, mouth trembling open. For a moment, he didn't move. He just stood there, overwhelmed, his body frozen in pure disbelief. Then the confetti began falling, soft, sparkling flakes of gold drifting all around him. The cats looked up in wonder, batting at the shiny pieces as they landed on their fur. The audience roared even louder, their cheers vibrating through the walls. Lewin dropped to his knees. Not out of exhaustion. Not out of shock, but out of gratitude so deep it felt sacred. He wrapped his arms around all three cats, holding them close as if protecting them from the overwhelming joy. Tears streamed down his face, tears of relief, victory, hope, and love all mixed together. A stagehand rushed forward to place a supportive hand on his shoulder, but Lewin barely noticed. His entire world was in his arms. Through the falling confetti, Simon stepped forward, his voice carrying across the stage. "Lewin," he said over the roar of the crowd, "you didn't just win the golden buzzer, you won our hearts." The audience erupted again. And as Lewin looked up at the glowing lights and the cats who had always been there, he whispered a promise only they could hear. "We did it. Now we can go home and make life better." It was the moment when a poor Filipino boy, whose only companions were three rescued cats, proved something powerful to the entire world. Love can create miracles. Kindness can change destiny. And even the smallest hearts can make the world stand up in amazement.